Welcome to the Understanding Project Management Discussions podcast. I'm Dave Barrett. My guest today is Dushyant Puri, and our topic relates to a key issue that I believe many organizations are grappling with. That is, how does Waterfall and Agile coexist and relate to each other as they deliver project outcomes? Through our discussion, Dushyant describes how he has approached this issue. Please welcome Dushyant Puri. Thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Great. Well, this is a significant sort of milestone, I suppose, because you are the first graduate of the project management program that I've had on and have talked to. You graduated the program a number of years ago. I think it was around 2013. You were the second cohort, I believe, as we were talking in the prior to this, and it's really great to see the great things that you've done, since graduating. It's one of the really key things, or really gratifying things about teaching, is to see this. So when we were talking beforehand, we were talking about what topic would be. You've had all kinds of experience, which you'll get into, and one of the things we were talking about is and this is something that's central to a lot of organizations, is kind of the interface between sort of traditional or waterfall project management and agile delivery, and how do those two coexist, or how do they interface together? How do they? Most organizations, they live in the same organization has some projects that make sense from a waterfall and some that make sense from an agile, and how do the two live together? So that's sort of the background of what we're going to talk about. So I'll just throw it over to you and just sort of start with, how did you first, I assume you started to see this in your work, and how did you first start to notice this, and just sort of give us a little background on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you so much. That was really kind of you to kind things that you said. I'm really happy to be here. Extremely lucky to have been a part of the program, and now coming back to Conestoga College as a project manager is a bonus, I would say. So coming back to our topic. So when I first started, just after graduating, I started working for a tier 2 automotive company. So tier 2 automotive, or any of these automotive companies that are making physical products, for the most part, are strictly stuck on waterfall methodologies, where everything is defined by a phase gate model. So you go in your initiation phase, you finish that off, you close that gate, and you never look back. So luckily, with my initial job placements, what I saw was there were a lot of times when we wanted to go back and change things, not even from a perspective of a big design change, but from a manufacturing change as well. So let's say there was a process that we'd figured out that how we're going to manufacture a small little part that goes to one of the OEMs. So a very interesting thing with when you're working with a tier 2 or a tier 1 company is, when OEMs come out and request for a quote, they don't give you the same price for the next 5 years of the project lifecycle. They always expect that there has to be a price decrease from year 1 to year 5. And you can't have a price decrease if you are using the same methods of manufacturing, you're using the same kind of equipment, and even just the same ideology of how the product was manufactured from day one against the end of life cycle. So a big hurdle that we saw in that case was when we wanted to go back and make any minor change, even in the manufacturing process, there is a mandate by the OEMs, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, that you have to get the whole process approved once more before you are able to go in and present the change. So I found that there was probably an area where you could go back and make some minor changes in the process of how we did project management of those things. And that's where and that was the time when agile methodology was not something that was very common, or even to this day, when it comes to like proper equipment manufacturing, there is not agile methodology picked up, because everybody is, one, extremely afraid of change, and nobody wants to go through the entire process and accept that, hey, that my process can be changed and can be improved. So I'll just since I graduated in 2003. You have been in the education sector for this. How have you seen a lot of, you must have also seen that a lot of these organizations are now leaning towards, and even from an education standpoint, students want to learn more about Agile than just the waterfall framework of project management.
Right, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that is, as you mentioned it is, I've seen in, both in education, but also in my, contacts and colleagues that are in industry, there is this exactly that of a number of years ago, it was mostly waterfall. It was mostly the phased approach and so on. And so there has been this increasing interest in it. So I've noticed it as well, and students are wanting to know about it as well. But I just wanted to pick up on your sort of sort of the history of the organization that you were in and so on. And so just to sort of paraphrase, so you had a phased, a gated approach, but it was changes. It was manufacturing changes that were causing issues where when changes were introduced, proposed, it caused, I think you said a reevaluation of the entire project, or the design. Was it they sort of wanted to take a bigger picture of the design aspect?
So what basically happened in cases like this, let's say I am manufacturing something as simple as like this small little injection molded part, right? So if I want to go back and make a change to the mold, to maybe manufacture this quicker, or accept some of my customers' change requests or anything like this, the way waterfall would work is, if a phase is closed and you want to go reevaluate, it starts off as a new project. So a big hurdle in that case is there would have been a lot of time these companies would just end up spinning their wheels when a customer request would come in. And every new request was a sort of a new project, because there was no flexibility in terms of how quickly we could go back and be able to make that change. It's easier when the projects are smaller in the terms of when the duration of the project is like 6 months or 4 months, where you have enough flexibility that, yes, I can finish what I'm trying to make in phase one, or as a deliverable one, and then I'll start a new project but I would start doing the evaluation a little sooner before my original scope ends. So this, over the years, when projects were smaller, like I'm saying, it was very simple, not very simple, but it was simpler in comparison for making changes. But as the projects got longer, like imagine if working for an OEM, and an average product cycle, or an average product development cycle, is about 16 months. And a big part of this 16-month is spent in the initial phases of the project, where you're just looking at what are your specs. You develop your gate zero model, and you get the requirements from your market analysis team and your business development team. They'll give you a bunch of these requirements that are true for today. Right. But delivering a product 16 months from now is going to be, like, technology is changing so fast. Like it's just like hard coding something in software that that you can't change on the fly. And your requirements are definitely going to change over the next 16 months. Right. It's absolutely impossible to predict what people would want 16 months from now, or right. Even the technology is moving so fast. For example, from my experience, just looking about like 3 years ago, LiDAR was I don't want to use the word unheard of, but it was not something that was extremely common. Now, you see LiDAR in pretty inexpensive implementations. Like it's not as expensive as it used to be. Development on LiDAR equipment is very easy.
Right.
So it just goes to show that if I define and point down everything that I'm going to need for a product that comes 16 months from now, it's definitely going to require some changes.
Right. So, I mean, when I think of sometimes, you know, and I do a lot of thinking about you know, waterfall or phased project management, which is very appropriate for many projects and industries and so on. If you're going to build you know, the classic, always the example of if you're going to build a bridge, for example, you know, waterfall phased is very appropriate for something like that. But you know, but there are ones that start to go, you know, agile, very appropriate for software development and so on. But there's a bunch of stuff in the middle, and that's where we're talking about. And one of the things I think about waterfall is one of its very strengths is its certainty, right? You're able to say to your project sponsor, your customer, and so on, okay, according to our plan, we will have it done in 16 months, you know, or 12 months, or 2 months, or whatever. Its certainty is its strength. However, it's, on the other hand, its certainty is its weakness, as you pointed out, is that how can you be certain about something in 16 months or whatever the duration is, when technology is changing, when it's in an arena or a type of industry where technology moves, you know, or you know, 6 months more before the pandemic, who knew of that? You know, who predict? I mean, many people had predicted it generally could happen sometime, but not when it did. So the certainty of waterfall is both its strength and its weakness. You know, and you know, then we'll flip over to agile in a little while, but it's also got its strengths and weaknesses. So, but yeah, so let's go back to so you're in this situation. You've got this case. You're in an environment where you want to make engineering changes or design changes or customer requests, but the mechanism of the waterfall is sort of preventing that. You know, it makes it difficult. You've tried to sort of shorten, and I think many waterfall projects, one of the ways to mitigate this problem is to make shorter projects. You know, make many small waterfalls rather than one big waterfall, and that's it's valid, but it's not always possible, right? So yeah, so you're in this situation. And is this when you started to play with Agile a little bit at that point?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a quick step back. Just an example from a manufacturing project lifecycle. So we're looking at a 16-month lifecycle where a lot of times project timelines are defined in a way with keeping in mind either the best case scenario or the worst case scenario. So for a lot of time, it wouldn't definitely give you like an honest visualization of the timeline. There is a lot more slack that you have to leave in cases of when you're doing these manufacturing projects where there is a phase where testing steps in. You can design your equipment or you can design your part to meet the absolute best specs, but in that case, there are a lot of times this part is going to interact with a bunch of other parts that are maybe not something that you have manufactured, something that have a lot more variables in comparison. So in cases like this where there is equipment testing that needs to step in, you have to, a lot of people also realize that, okay, my testing schedule says I'm going to run this test or do my stress test for over a week, and then I'm going to leave another week for hoping that there would be a minor failure, and then I would move on to fixing that issue, do another test, and move on in life. So you have pretty much left a week and a half of slack just to keep that buffer, and so that you don't have to keep pushing your timeline against every time you hit a failure. On the other hand, let's say is the best case scenario and your testing goes perfectly, there are no concerns, and after that, you just have a week of doing nothing. You'll try to pull things back, but a lot of those things might also be dependent on your vendors. Like if I look at this from a project management standpoint, there are times when things get very stressful because either you are running too fast or you're moving too slow. So neither of these scenarios are ideal, and waterfall methodology makes it really difficult for something like this. When situations like this arise, what we had thought, and there was a request that actually came from our management, is like, hey, your software team is doing great. Like I can see you guys are pushing out brand new products in 6 months, and then there are these updates that you keep on making. How can we integrate waterfall methodology and agile methodology into something smaller, or something right in the middle where it helps me keep my deadlines perfectly in place, but also gives me the agility to actually do development? So this is where it all started. And even from agile methodologies, like, and this is really unfortunate, that a lot of times when people look at agile methodologies and agile project management and looking at scrum cycles, they always feel that, okay, if I do a project in an agile environment, I have the freedom to do whatever I want. There are no timelines, there is no scope, and this is completely wrong. Like I personally feel that with agile project management, when you're running a sprint, um, it's a lot more strict in comparison to doing a waterfall, because the amount of tasks that are given to a team are so well thought out, and they're in such a small window that the flexibility in that delivery is close to impossible.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just agree. I really agree with what you're saying, in that there is this sort of, an idea, and it's just I think you've mentioned it, and I've sort of sensed the same thing, is that one of the attractions of Agile is like, oh, good, we're unleashed from the sort of bureaucracy or the structure of the waterfall. Little do they know, or when you look at a methodology like Scrum or others, is that there's almost more rigor. They're very structured in terms of what happens. Now, the team inside, there's lots of autonomy of what the team does within pure Scrum and so on, but the start, end, what happens each day, et cetera, becomes very structured. So I guess that's be careful what you wish for in a way.
Yeah.
But interesting. I want to come back to what you said about your management. Sort of, they were kind of. Can I interpret this to say they were asking for kind of give us the best of both worlds? Is that
Exactly.
we like the big, we want the 16-month sort of window. We got to work with other suppliers and companies and so on. We just can't say, well, we'll do things whenever they come out the back end.
Yeah. So like you were saying, that management came to us and they were like, okay, your software team is delivering products left, right, and center. It's moving fairly fast. There's always something that's coming out for people to see. And what I would like to highlight is there are some situations where waterfall methodology is the way to go. Like there's no other way to actually do this but under a waterfall methodology. But there are some places where Scrum is the way to go, or an agile project management methodology is the way to go. But there are times when, especially when you're doing innovation, when you're doing research projects, when you're building brand new first to market technologies that are completely going to blow people away, there has to be something that runs in the middle. Because if you put your innovation and your R&D team under a waterfall methodology, it kind of ties them down with specific dates of delivery. And again, for research and development, it's a lot of it is just taking a step back, doing research, finding out how things are going to move forward in the next 16 months or next year or next 6 months and build a prediction model.
Right.
That this is how things are gonna keep moving.
Right.
So
how did that work then? So you've got the sort of the waterfall structure in place, but you're also trying to have at least a part of the project or certain deliverables within it delivered within an agile model. How do you connect those two in the work that you've done?
So when we're looking at an agile system, let's not call it a Scrum cycle or Kanban or something like that. When you're looking at an agile system and you want to integrate that with a phase gate model or a waterfall methodology, the way it would work is a lot of times, and I try and say this in the best way, when people are building business cases, their business cases are fairly they build this business case in a silo and they are unidirectional. They don't actually want to, they know what they want, which is great for the team to work on, but they're only thinking about one thing at a time. For a lot of what this creates, and especially for the development team, what happens in cases like this is there are a lot of times when you can build a product, but 6 months from now, another request comes in that would pretty much render the last product that you built obsolete. So it's not only a waste of resource, it's a massive waste of research dollars that the company is spending on. A lot of time, this money comes from funding agencies. A lot of time, it's a big pool of money that the company already has assigned at the beginning of the year. But in cases like this, let's say you spend about $1.5 million on developing a system that when your car is driving forward and it sees a wall, the car stops. But 6 months from now, somebody wants us to do the exact same thing, but when we're backing the car, right? So it's not always, since when you're building this product from the ground up, there are cost restrictions, there's a defined scope. So you build your system around, or when you're procuring controllers, you're buying your sensors, you look at them from a standpoint that, okay, all I have to do is when my car sees a wall in the front, the car is going to stop by itself. But now when you try to add the exact same thing on the rear of the car, you realize that you've run out of ports on your controller, or your controller doesn't have enough processing power, or the cost is going up the roof. But if I had developed the controller initially that already had some expandability options, well, now it seems pretty obvious when people say it out loud that, oh, there probably should have been some expansion ports on the controller from the get-go, but that wasn't the case because there were other issues that were driving the team to buy whatever controller they had to.
Right.
So when we step into an agile methodology, instead of just keeping our eye on one task, what we would want to do is our management or our BA team or anybody else who comes up with these, like our product owners and people who come up with this like crazy out of the world, brand new ideas that are going to change everything, to actually take a step back and spend a lot more time when they're scoping the project. So instead of just giving us one scope and giving the team a single scope that this is all you're going to work on, we take a look at the bigger picture first. What that would also help us do is maybe there are some projects that need to start right now and are a must-do deliverable, which are projects that are like high priority, right? Like something that's going to bring you dollars right now, or is a request that directly comes from the end user. But in cases like when you're doing new product development, you actually take a step back, take a look at the bigger picture, and then you sort of start combining different products or different outputs from that project together, and then pick up, let's say, I'm just going to go back to an example of a car again. So if what we were trying to do, if we started from just the front of the car and then we just wanted to go at the back of the car, but what if somebody also wanted the exact same feature on the side of the car as well? Because eventually that's going to come. If people start adopting forward collision, they would also want rear collision, they would also want sensors on the side of the car. So that's where this agility actually steps in, that you are able to deliver one thing at a time, and then over the years or in the next steps of the project, you just keep on adding on the same product itself, instead of being like, okay, this, I just delivered a front collision detection and this is what you're going to get, and then we start the entire process all over again. So what our management actually really enjoyed from this was the whole exercise of what comes next. Because for a lot of times, these projects were always, and a lot of times these projects and new product ideas are thought of, but nobody wants to implement them because, okay, I can do this first, it's going to cost me X number of dollars, and then if that picks up, we can do product B on top of it. So stepping into Agile from that standpoint was a good exercise, not only for the team because they were not bound by dates of when a research deliverable needs to happen. Yes, of course, there are, like you were saying, it's a lot more structured when doing projects in a Scrum environment compared to a Waterfall environment, because our Scrum cycles were fairly short. And you could actually see deliverables happening a lot sooner in comparison to how things would look when you're doing the exact same thing in waterfall methodology.
Yeah. So let me just recap that a little bit. So just make sure that I'm just following the sequence. So I mean, in your environment, if you were going to have a project that would do, say, the sensors or the automated driving and so on, in a traditional project, you would scope it all out. You would design it. You would have some period of time, the planning phase or whatever, where you would figure it all out, create all of your specs, your design, your drawings, etc., whatever it is, and then you would code build for a period of time, and then the problem became is that the inevitable changes started to come in, which then caused things to happen, right? You mentioned those earlier. So now the new process that you're talking about, I think, is you're saying, okay, let's replace that, or correct me if I'm misinterpreting this. You're saying let's replace that by more of a sprint-based model, where we're going to say, okay, we're not going to attempt to design it front to back before we're going to work in basically in a 2 week or X period of time sprints, and use the repetitive model within would it be generally the planning, executing phases of Waterfall within that time frame you'd be working, or am I simplifying it?
It's a very simplified way to look at this, which is great. But the way we would actually look at this was, so again, this methodology was not created by anybody in our team. It's something that Tesla did, and we sort of wanted to copy it and then adapt it to the culture for my organization. The way it would, every Tesla Model 3 that you buy comes completely equipped with full autonomous drive. It's just that you have to pay for the service. A big part of this, why Tesla wanted to do it, was because the hardware is already there and the customer is paying for it. But as and when the software becomes available, the software features you can unlock. So it's excellent for what we were trying to do when both the hardware component and the software component need to work together. Because the hybrid system cannot actually work in situations where you are building an equipment, or just going back to the same thing, like building a bridge, right? You can't or you shouldn't be trying to be extremely agile when it comes to building a bridge. Like there is a specific way to build a bridge. You bring in the pillars first, and then you put this next surface on it, you put your supports in, you pave the road, and all is taken care of. So when both sides of hardware and software come together, that's where this flexible approach works absolutely wonders, because it gives the hardware design team their flexibility, because they already know what the end goal is going to be, which is like actually 16 months from now, thinking about how things are going to evolve, how products going to evolve, how technology is going to evolve, and then the software team, they can do wonders and push out an early release software and then keep on developing on it with adding features over and over again.
So let me just take another run at this. So the software I can see is you're developed through Agile. What's the waterfall component of your installation? What was happening that was still waterfall? Because it sounds like that's a lot of Agile, right? Which makes sense for software development, for new features, being able to push them out to the cars and so on. You can have regular updates and so on. That's very, a lot of agility is involved there. But what is the waterfall structure that's still there? Like what sits in there? I'm just trying to get my mind around that in your example.
Yeah. So let's say we are building this hardware controller. I'm just going to go back to the old Tesla example. So the way it would work is you build your controller with a waterfall methodology.
Okay.
But now, since and all your scope is picked up not from the initial scope that was given to you from a gate zero or a phase gate model, but you pick up your initial scope from the user stories that come to you, right? So when what we did was start this off as an agile project, and we would get the product owners in the room, have a discussion with them of the key features that they're looking for. Doesn't matter whether it's on a software level or a hardware level, or even from a UI level, for all we care. So we would look at everything that is needed and everything that is on their wish list, and then the team of project managers would sit down with the development team for hardware and be like, okay, so this is my deliverable for everything in software, UI, and hardware. You tell me what hardware requirements you would want, and we build the hardware around that. That's how we would scope our hardware or our controller in that way. And from that point on, the scope was set, and since we already knew that there might be more changes coming in, so there is a rule of thumb that you always leave 25% expandability on your board, just as so keeping that in mind, everything was developed in that way, and we had a very good idea of cost in cases like that from the get-go, because we are thinking much further ahead in comparison to a regular year-long project or a 2-year project.
Okay, so could I say that in that case that you did the initial user stories and so on and got the hardware, software, and user interface together, that the hardware development was somewhat more waterfall-esque with that 25%? You're saying with that almost 25% holdback, or flexibility, but they were following more of a sort of a structured approach, while Agile is iterating on, while software is iterating on the Agile side. Is that the way the two were coexisting?
Yeah, and the way it would work is, and this is where things start to get a lot more complicated from a project management standpoint, is that every deadline or every milestone that would come from the waterfall methodology, in one way or the other, has to coincide with your Scrum cycles as well, because you can't run both things individually.
Right. Right.
And in that case, what sometimes would end up happening is, like, let's say if one team's running too fast and the other team is not running as fast, you would actually want to bring the team together and be like, okay, let's sit down and see what the actual concern is here. Why can't we have the same synchronous deliverables from both the teams as we had expected? So in cases like that, there have been situations where we've hit a roadblock and the hardware team's running too fast and the software team's like, no, we just can't do this. The software testing and the stress tests are going to take longer, or vice versa. So in cases like that, it's where even the waterfall methodology has to take a little bit of flexible approach.
Yeah.
And the way I say that is, you are not changing timelines, you're not changing your scope, and you're not changing the cost, but you're actually re-evaluating what the overall impact on the Scrum cycle would be.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, this is starting to make, this is making sense to me, and I can see the way that, you know, it seems to me that the more your project exists in, you know, hardware is at the real world, sort of like physical world, tends to, I think, what, you know, is tending more towards a bit more waterfall, you know, with, you know, waterfall does not mean no changes ever. Like you can have change control and flexibility, like you said, that 25%, you know, variability. But it seems to me the more hardware-ish you are, the more trends towards waterfall, the more software virtual you are, trends towards agile. And it's, you're describing the interfaces between them, which is really interesting. A question I have for you is, how does the communication happen between those two teams? Like, are they, were there sort of like, I've seen in the past, in different scenarios, teams can get really embraced in their own methodology and almost view the other as wrong, as those, you know, the waterfall people would say, oh, those, you know, those crazy, you know, they're just, you know, anything goes, you know, and the agile people could view the waterfall people as, oh, they're sort of stodgy and, you know, rigid and so on. Did you experience that? And if so, what did you do? How did you mitigate?
Yeah, this actually hits super close. The first project that we did had exactly the same problem, because people from the agile team were, there were some people that I was working with. They were like, they were really, they were big believers in, no, if a project's going to run, the only way it's going to run is under waterfall. And there were some people who were working on the waterfall methodology team or the hardware team. They were like, it's and they were, I would hear this in pretty much every status meeting every quarter, is like, yeah, the agile team or the software team gets to do whatever they want, and we just have these like strict timelines and these strict deliverables. I can't move away from them. I have an issue with the vendor, and then the software team can just go home and work, and it's like a never-ending battle between how the other one gets away with doing whatever they want, or how the other team has it easier. The best way over the years that I actually have figured, or I personally think the best way to deal with this was just have the entire team in daily stand-ups. So there comes this transparency from both the teams that, no, the hardware team has these strict deliverables that they have to deliver. So does the agile side of the project. Like, our software team still had those hard deadlines of absolutely no ifs and buts that they have to deliver. The one thing that the agile team or the software team was not very happy about, that doing a KPI and building those performance indexes of how the team is delivering software is a lot easier in a Scrum methodology, because you are assigning story points to everybody, and then all the resources are assigned to a specific story point. So you get that transparency a lot. People weren't too happy about, and you know how project teams work, right? Some people are Some people will just do the work, won't say a word about it. The other people won't do as much and say a lot about it. So yeah, one thing was you make sure that, like, I made sure that the entire project team is on daily stand-ups. When we are running retrospectives, we keep them extremely short, like a 15-minute retrospective, which the hardware and the software team would be in as well. We used to have software retrospects where we requested our hardware team to just be on the call and not physically be there so that they can actually do their work but still be a part of the team. And the same thing with our bi-weekly touch-in basis with the hardware team as well. Okay, what's going on? Do you have any issues? Are there any concerns? And we only had one risk register for, doesn't matter whether it was for the hardware team or the software team, so everybody knew what was happening. So building that transparent communication pipeline wasn't really easy in the beginning, but as time went along, people did realize that yes, both the teams are working equally hard, and yeah, we got along fairly well.
It's interesting whenever you get people working together, these sort of things come up, and I agree. I like the approach that you said you took. Makes perfect sense of if teams are apart, there is this grass is always greener on the other side sort of things. Almost conspiracy theories start to evolve of they're out to get us or something, or you get all these weird ideas that generate, and that if you shine the light of communication on them, like put them in the same room, have them have the same, like you said, the same risk register and so on, that they're on the same team, they're just working in different ways. And that mutual understanding goes a long way. Does it solve it completely? Probably not, but it probably goes a long way towards this whole idea of my way's right, your way's wrong. Which is those are what I'll call the purists. They're the ones that they've bought into their methodology, and it's like they've got. I've seen it in other methodologies and so on over the years, of these blinders on, and they see everything with the tool they have. Like it's the old, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail, sort of thing. And that, if you've got the agile, kind of messiah, everything can be solved in agile, or vice versa. Everything should be waterfall, and that's where the more I think enlightened is that you look at it and say, okay, there are things, strengths and weaknesses of both, but there's also, I think, almost I don't know if it's all, but probably I'm sure close to all organizations, they've got to figure out how these two live together. I'm sure every organization look at this, or at least struggle with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even there are some parts of waterfall projects, like you can build a beautiful phase gate model for a project that's going to run a fairly bit long, especially going back to like the automotive OEMs, where every minute is thousands of dollars if production line stops. So in cases like that, even for equipment testing, you can always bring in weekly retrospectives. And when I got my when I got my certified Scrum Master, the mentor that I was working with on it, he told me one thing that was very simple. Okay, again, from his standpoint, answers to literally everything is always agile methodology. That's what you do. Everything else in the world doesn't work. But what he always told me was, look at it from a standpoint of how Scrum helps projects, not how it makes life difficult. So his idea was Scrum or agile methodology is there so that you can deliver product and deliver products faster. That's the difference. That's one of the key differences between the ideology from a Scrum, Kanban, or a waterfall, or a phase gate model. Because when you are doing a phase gate model, you're always thinking about delivering a final product at the end of your project. But with working with agile teams, what I've seen is the advantage of getting that instant gratification of, yes, my software works, and then I'm going to add another feature on it, then I'm going to add another feature on it. It's just excellent to see how it develops.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good perspective from the person that you were talking about, how it can help the project and so on. So anyways, on that note, I think we could talk about this for a long time to come, but I want to thank you for your time on this, Dushyant. It's been great to talk to you about this. I think you've opened up a whole lot of ideas and thoughts that hopefully people will think more about. So, and it was great connecting with you after all.
Absolutely.
It was great to see you.
Yeah, and I hope we well, I work for the college now, so I'm pretty sure we'll be in touch.
Yes, we will be passing in the halls someday soon.
Yeah, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Yeah, bye.